In 2018, a country with just over 3 million people made it all the way to the final of a World Cup, which isn't exactly expected to happen. And then 4 years later, they made the semifinal, again losing to the eventual winner of the tournament to prove it wasn't a fluke. So how is a country that is 22 times smaller than Germany consistently competing at the highest level of football? Well, to answer that, we have to go back a few decades, when a country that was so politically significant, a world powerhouse, was held together by a football. In my first semester of college, I was assigned to take a gen ed class called, and I'm not joking, How to Succeed in a Dictatorship. Now, I don't know how that applies to my electronic media broadcasting major, but that's just a little bit of insight into the American education system. I got to spend months studying a dictator named Josip Broz Tito. And I also learned all about Yugoslavia, which was a country that was formed directly following the two Balkan Wars and World War I. These 6 countries, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Slovenia, North Macedonia, and Montenegro, all have very cultural and ethnic differences. But after you fight 3 wars in a decade, people get sick and tired of fighting. So they decided to come together, strengthen numbers to protect themselves against any other countries over the course of the next few years. But as time went on and on and on, these ethnic differences and cultural differences began to become a big problem again. So this is where Josip Broz Tito comes into the picture, because with his leadership comes also the idea of Yugoslavism, basically saying that you can simultaneously be Croat and Yugoslav. You can simultaneously be Serbian and Yugoslav. No matter your ethnic background, you can still love Yugoslavia. But to promote this idea, he needed something to bring everybody together. And that was football. Just 1 year into his reign over Yugoslavia came the introduction of SFR Yugoslavia, or the Yugoslav First League of Football, which combined all 6 republics in one league, including the cities like Zagreb, Sarajevo, and the capital Belgrade. So instead of solving their cultural differences with a bullet to the head, they solved them with bullet headers past the other team's goalkeeper. The Yugoslav First League saw the growth of some of the biggest clubs like Red Star Belgrade, Partizan, Dinamo Zagreb, Hajduk Split. Let me know if I pronounced that right if you're Croatian. But also beyond the First League was the Yugoslav national team, combining the best players from all 6 of the republics. And no better place for Josip Broz Tito to promote his Yugoslavism than the Olympics. The 1948 Olympics was a great opportunity for Tito to show his citizens and the entire world the sporting prowess of Yugoslavia. And they did so, especially in football, making it all the way to the semifinal and then knocking out the host Great Britain 3-1. They took home the silver medal after losing to Sweden in the final, but they showed the world that they are one of the footballing powerhouses. Then in 1952, they made the exact same run, making it all the way to the final and then losing to a very good Hungary side with Ferenc Puskás, taking home the silver medal in football once again. But they had many decades of success ahead of them. As they continued to grow their first league and continued to get better and better, Yugoslavia could end up being one of the greatest footballing nations on the face of the planet. 8 years later, at the 1960 Summer Olympics, Yugoslavia finally won the gold. It may not be the World Cup, but for the time being, they were crowned kings of football. Led by striker Milan Galic, he also led Partizan to a European Cup final just 5 years later. Partizan was the first team out of the Yugoslav First League to make it to a European Cup final, now known as Champions League, but wouldn't actually be the last. Yugoslavia was nicknamed the Brazilians of Europe due to their flair and attacking style of football, and their continued success at the highest level convinced UEFA to let them host the European Cup Championship in 1976 in Belgrade and Zagreb. The footballing and sporting dynasty built under the idea of Yugoslavism by Josip Broz Tito was flourishing, and it continued to grow all the way up until 1991 when Red Star Belgrade, out of the Yugoslav First Division, won the European Cup Championship after taking down Bayern Munich in the semifinal, beating Marseille in the final, the first ever Yugoslav team to win the European Cup. This was the peak. It was all coming together, and just 27 days later, Yugoslavia ceased to exist entirely. You see, Josip Broz Tito had died a few years earlier, and with that, seemingly soon after, died Yugoslavism. Every single team and every single country became more individualistic, more nationalistic towards their own republic. In fact, these matches in the Yugoslav First Division became more and more aggressive and more political as time went on, until Yugoslavia completely collapsed in 1991. This ultimately led to a very brutal Yugoslav war between the Balkan countries and denied us what could have been one of the greatest national teams in the history of the sport, which was the Yugoslav national team in the 1990s. It was set up for perfection, and unfortunately, it was the team that never was. As Yugoslavia fell, so did the Yugoslav First League. And so did the Yugoslav national team, now recognized by FIFA as 7 different countries: Slovenia, Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Kosovo, all representing their own national teams instead of one Yugoslavia. We were robbed of the Yugoslavia national team in the 90s, which could have been one of the greatest teams in the history of the sport. But even today, the Balkan region produces more talent per capita than most other countries. Croatia leading the list, and Serbia and Montenegro not far behind. They kick above their weight class almost consistently, and a lot of that can be traced back to the Yugoslavism under Josip Broz Tito. But imagine if Croatia had the help of all of the other 6 countries going into these World Cups. If Yugoslavia still existed today, would 2018 have seen Yugoslavia win the World Cup? Would 2022 have seen them do it back to back? Imagine adding the help of the likes of Dusan Tadic, Milinkovic-Savic, Edin Dzeko to already an incredible Croatian team, and that's just to name a few. This is what Yugoslavia's team could look like today if it still existed. Absolute talent everywhere on the pitch. You're adding this Croatian team that's already making runs to the semifinal and final of the World Cup to players like Kostic, Milinkovic-Savic, Dzeko, Vlahovic, Oblak, Savic, and Rahmani, and then even more players on the bench, adding so much depth which is needed in a lot of these tournament runs, like Mitrovic, Perisic, Jovic, Tadic, and Brozovic, Elmas, and it goes on and on and on. In fact, I think this team could be even better if Yugoslavia still existed, because of the fact that the Yugoslav First League would still probably be at one of the highest levels like it was in the 80s and early 90s. But of course, that disbanded, and now all of the best talent goes elsewhere to develop. That is what was and what could have been of the Yugoslavian national team. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe to Nitro Football. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. If you guys are enjoying my videos here on Nitro Football, check out my second channel, Nitro Charge, down in the description as well.